Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be having a little think about one of Scarlatti's 555, if you don't mind, keyboard sonatas. 1685, deeply significant year. Bach was born that year, Handel was born that year, and Domenico Scarlatti was born that year. So pretty good year for composers. Domenico Scarlatti, not to be confused with his uncle Alessandro Scarlatti. But Domenico was the great writer of these keyboard sonatas. And the one we're going to look at, which is K208 in the Kirkpatrick catalogue, is very typically in binary form. So you're looking at a page now and you see that we've got the first handful of bars, 14 bars, and then there's a repeat sign at the end of it. So there's the end of the A section. It would be repeated with ornaments the second time. And then we go on to a B section, which is about the same length again, and also would be repeated with ornamentation there. So lots of Scarlatti sonatas written on this binary form plan. Nothing like the Mozart sonatas and other sonatas that come later, where you're talking about pieces of music in 3 or 4 movements. These are all single movement works. Let's get a flavour of the music. So there's the A section of this particular sonata. Some of these sonatas are quite fast and dancey, others are a bit more reflective, like this one. I think it's a very beautiful sonata. Does it sound like Bach or Handel? Absolutely not. It's still distinctively Baroque in its character. It would have been written for a keyboard instrument other than the piano, of course, the harpsichord, for example. But it's got a very distinctive style that makes it Baroque, but really quite separate from the kind of Bach and Handel thing. First of all, it's not particularly contrapuntal, is it? I mean, the left hand, you might even say, is slightly boring. Wow, that's a bit of an accusation, isn't it? But in the sense that the left hand is all crotchets or quarter notes. We're just repeating A, and then we repeat D. And then we have the excitement of 2 parts and a little bit of movement before we repeat something. Another bit of movement, 2 notes, then another 2 notes. So the left hand's not doing anything terribly exciting. But what's the purpose of this sonata? The left hand is just accompanying a right hand melody. So the left hand is there to keep a pulse moving through the music. It's there to provide a bass line. It's there to provide the harmonic framework for the piece. And then what we have in the right hand is this rather beautiful melody with these appoggiaturas and the 16th notes or the semiquavers that are providing decoration and a very distinctive approach to the rhythm because it's full of syncopations. So anyone who thinks syncopation was invented by jazz musicians in the 20th century, have a look at this. It's full of syncopation. Look at things like when we get to measure 5. It's kind of Baroque jazz, isn't it? And it's one of the things that makes this very distinctive, slightly kind of jarring syncopated rhythms, but belonging to this beautifully constructed cantabile line. And so you see what the right hand is doing. Well, we're spelling out an A major chord at the beginning because that is the key of the piece. But it's just decorated with this rather beautiful appoggiatura. So instead of just going up to the dominant note, we go one above and put the appoggiatura in. Then we just kind of run down to the B. And then in the second bar, where we're kind of outlining a chord 2, sort of 2 in first inversion. So we had all chord 1 in the first bar. Now it's a kind of chord 2. We're coming down this chord of B minor, but we're connecting with these appoggiaturas. Appoggiaturas, leaning notes. So you lean on a note that's slightly dissonant with the prevailing chord, and it just draws a little bit of emotional kind of tension out of the music, doesn't it? If it was without those, it would be a bit boring, I think. Be right, but listen to the appoggiaturas. Ta-dum, ta-dum. It really adds something, doesn't it? With that little bit of dissonance, that notion of kind of leaning notes. They're almost kind of crying at you, aren't they? So again, people who think Baroque music isn't emotional, well, think again, actually. There's real emotional content in those appoggiaturas kind of crying at you. And then in the third bar, we're going on to a chord 5 in its last inversion. So it's a 5-7, it's dominant 7th in its last inversion, resolving onto a tonic chord in its first inversion. And then you notice this bit at the end of the third bar, we've got more appoggiaturas. These were written as ornaments. These are written out in full. So one pair, and then having designed the first 3 measures with the syncopated rhythm, the appoggiatura idea, the idea of spelling out the chords and connecting them a bit, we then had this continuous run in the 4th bar. And that's a beautifully written phrase as well, isn't it? Or part of the phrase. 4 notes, then another group of 4 notes on the same pattern. So you see we've got these, and then the same thing, a 4th higher, and then a big leap, a really expressive rising 6, where we go over the top, because A is the tonic at the top, we go 1 over that, and then we come down the whole scale, all the way down to that bottom A. So I think Scarlatti has a wonderful idea about melodic design in these sonatas. Well, we've been in A major, so when we come to this point at the end of 4 going into 5, that's a perfect cadence in A major. Now, what does he do next? Here's a bit of syncopation we were talking about a moment ago. And you see that the key is moving now because we've got these D sharps involved in the thing. We are really on our way to E major. So by the time we get to this corner, we've got a kind of perfect cadence in E major. So that kind of makes sense because in these binary plans, usually you start in the tonic key and the A section modulates to the dominant key, has a final cadence in the dominant key, which is exactly what happens here. And then in the B section, you start in the dominant key and you work your way back to the tonic key. Interestingly, in the B section here, it doesn't quite do that because there's a kind of chord of E minor going on to a chord of B minor. But by the time we get to the end, we've certainly got a cadence at the end in A major. But even when he's moved to E major at this point in bar 8, he's on the move. When we look at what happens next, you think, well, surely we've got to E major a bit soon. We're only halfway through the A section and we're already in the dominant key. But then he does this, C natural. Oh, so that's a chord of A minor, a chord of E minor, then a chord kind of 2-7 in E minor, but then, beginning of bar 10, oh, a 5-7 chord in first inversion in B major. Because then we go to B major, and then you think, why are we now in B major? That's the kind of dominant of the dominant. Well, of course, chord 1 in B major is chord 5 in E major. So do you see what he's done? He started in A major with 3 sharps. He's gone to E major with 4 sharps. Now he slipped the other side, gone to B major with 5 sharps, and then he's going to come back to E major. So it's a kind of sort of point of symmetry, if you like, to close the section. So the key movement works superbly well. But we've had that little hint of kind of E minor and A minor on the way as well. So that's just kind of broken up what could have been a slightly predictable cycle there. So the key movement is fascinating through all of this. So if we just look at that again from bar 7, this is E major, then C natural. Notice there's a suspension in the tenor. It's a 7/6 suspension. A minor chord, E minor chord, 2/7B in E minor, then 5/7B in B major, 1 in B major. See how it kind of lifts the emotional temperature? And then, oh, okay, we're going back to E major. And then at the end of bar 11, he could have stopped. And we could have just had a perfect cadence going from the end of bar 11 to the beginning of bar 12. What does Scarlatti do? He has that chord 5, and then he kind of interrupts it, doesn't he, by going to the 6th degree of the scale in the bass. But then he has a 7/6 suspension going on, and the right hand gets into a series of these semi-quaver groups, these 16th note groups, with the last note tied to the first of the next one, just to keep the rhythmic syncopation going, and builds up again a more continuous flow to a peak note, this A, at the beginning of bar 13. So this is where we think it's going to finish. It gets interrupted, the suspension, the syncopation, and here we go, lovely big rising 7th, so expressive, and then an appoggiatura that's chromatic with that B sharp, and then we come to chord 1 in second inversion, and then really that's basically a dominant chord with a few notes thrown at it. And then we finish just on these unison E's. It's rather beautifully written, isn't it? And so that's how the first half of that works. Well, we could go on and talk about the second half, but really what I'm trying to do is just draw out a few threads of, well, what makes Scarlatti rather different from Bach and Handel, and what makes Scarlatti's music work in its own right. The simplicity of the left hand could be boring. Actually, it's strangely attractive, just delivering the pulse in an ongoing way, giving us a bass line, filling out the harmony. And then we have this wonderfully constructed melody in the right hand, real cantabile melody, which is kind of enhanced by the appoggiaturas, by the continuous semiquavers or 16th notes, by the appoggiaturas. And then we get these little dissonances that result from the appoggiaturas and the suspensions in the left hand. And then we get this fascinating key journey where we think we're just going to start in the tonic key and finish in the dominant, but we do these other interesting moves on the way. So you end up with this beautifully attractive music. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, you might want to go to our website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. We've got all these videos out on the YouTube channel. They're all one-offs. Hopefully lots of things of great interest to you there. If you want something that's more progressive, kind of A to Z, taking you through a course of study in theory or oral training or analysis or a whole range of other things, you'll find that our courses are delivering just that. So if you click on courses on the homepage, you can explore the whole range of things we have on our offer there. While you're on the homepage, you can also click a link to Maestros, and that will tell you all about our global Music Matters community, which is a very rich place in which to be. Fantastic resource for people. If you become a maestro, there are all sorts of fun things, badges, emojis, behind the scenes material, that kind of thing. But also you can get discounts on the courses we offer. You can also participate in our monthly live streams. So 2 of those each month. One of those is a kind of solid teaching input from me, often on topics that are raised by members of the group. So it's your chance to go into something in detail that you're interested in. And we run a live chat through this so people can ask questions, pass comments, and that all makes it very engaging. Our second live stream of the month is focused on submissions from members. It's often compositions, harmony exercises, musical ideas people are working on, theory exercises, all sorts of things we've had in there. Recordings of your own playing if you want to put that in there. And the idea is you contribute that, and then I give you evaluative one-to-one feedback on it. And again, we share with the group, the live chat runs, people can pass comments and ask questions, and we all learn from each other. That's the great thing. It's a fantastic learning resource, and it's very supportive. Everybody out there is facing the same successes, the same challenges, and it's a great opportunity to learn from each other, but to support each other and see how we can kind of rub shoulders and proceed on this journey in what can be a bit of a lonely trail when you're out there on your own. But as soon as you connect with this group, you feel part of something and you feel that mutual support around you. So if that's of interest to you, have a look at the website, see what Maestros is all about.